da pelge drolora zambe zeparace pande lame shabla solvade Oma Guru Vaj Matimuni Shasane Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajra Dara Sumatimuni Shasane Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Monishas Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Monishasane Kar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Olu Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tukdan Dagi Yi Tön Yerme Çıktı Çingi Olu Makyuke Kudan Dagi Olu Makyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Makyuke Tukdan Dagi Tön Yerme Çıktı Çingi Olu Om Muni Muni Hamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni 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 Shakyamuni Swaha Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Chi Dage Chinso Gibe Sonamki Drola Pinchre Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyap Dage Chinso Gibe Sonamki Drola Pinchre Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Dagi Chinso Gibe Sonamki Drola Pinchre Sangye Drupar Sho Nel Buddha, nel Dharma e nel Sangha prendo rifugio fino all'illuminazione. Con la pratica della generosità e delle altre perfezioni possa io ottenere lo stato di Buddha per il beneficio di tutti gli esseri senzienti. Namo Alhaike Dan Ludan Jinke Drubonda Da Mike Namdan Droba Kunge Dhanam Chitsampa Tamche keto dagi chöten. Una volta uno dei miei
Once, one of my teachers, Kyabche Dragon Rinpoche, said,
la prima cosa che dobbiamo
the first thing we need to
affinché
do
qualunque cosa avvenga
in order for anything to happen is to desire it. This is the first step.
e molto difficilmente noi
And
riusciremo ad arrivare in un
it's
luogo
difficult to arrive to a place where we didn't want to arrive to,
qualcosa che non abbiamo mai
or
voluto fare.
doing something that we didn't want to do.
Quando noi tutto ciò che richiede che venga
Everything
messo
that
in energia
requires
richiede allo
energy
stesso tempo
requires at the same time
che noi desideriamo.
that we desire, that we want that.
Quando arriva il concetto della meditazione,
And when we talk about meditation, there is a question that comes with it, which is not whether I want to meditate or not, but rather,
la priorità per me?
what's my priority?
Vivere in un mondo perfetto
Live in a perfect world,
o saper vivere bene nel
or being able to live as I am?
Perché se per noi
Because if for us what we want is to live in a comfortable world, let's say perfect, and we want things to go well,
meditare va bene,
to meditate is okay, it's nice,
certa fatica
but it will be quite difficult
a compimento a un livello più profondo.
to bring it to completion on a more deep level, on a deeper level.
Noi partiamo da proprio
But
questo
if we start from this paradigm shift of this view of the world,
paradigma dove il
where
obiettivo
my
non è
objective is
risolvere i
not to
problemi,
solve
fare che
problems and make it so that everything is as I want it to.
non è ottenere gli
It's
oggetti
not obtaining the objects of desire or keeping the objects of desire, keeping away what we don't want, but it's
trasformare il modo in cui
transforming the way I live the world.
quando questo diventa
When
priorità,
this
a quel punto
becomes a priority at this point, priority in my life,
famiglia,
it's family, there's work,
ci sono i piaceri,
there are pleasures
vari interessi della vita,
and various interests of life, but amongst all of this, there is me.
e io mi metto davanti un
And I put in front of myself a deeper objective. I want to develop my characteristics that allow me to
affinché io stia bene.
live well in the world, because in order for me to live well any situation, I need to use these tools that allow me to do that. If I don't have patience, how many different situations in life we will find
Diciamo che dovrebbero essere quanti
that are not as we want, or many challenges that we can find in our lives.
O meglio, sempre.
Actually, always. If I'm not the one that develops my own satisfaction, no matter how much I will have, there will always be someone else having more, or there will always be something that is better than what I have. If I'm not the one that develops harmony with the world and with myself, there will always be a reason for conflict, because I will always find myself in front of situations that requires me to confront them. And once Lama Michel Rinpoche told me that in 1963 he was in Tibet, he wanted to leave Tibet. In 59 there was this shift of government, let's say, where the Dalai Lama left Tibet and the Chinese government entered, and many things changed. And Lama Ganchen in 1963 wanted to run away from it. It was a very difficult challenge in order to go away, walking through the mountains, etc. But he said it was more difficult after the frontier rather than before, because when he finished to cross the frontier, they were going through India, but they found themselves in a place where they were building some streets. So at a certain point, some dynamites exploded, and trees started to fall down, rocks were flying everywhere. Everything was exploding because they were building these streets. So fortunately, nobody was harmed. And when they got out of the situation, people from the government said, what are you doing here? And they said, no, we came here from Tibet. And at a certain point, what they asked to Lama Ganchen, they said, did you see some Chinese people? And Lama Ganchen said, yes. And this soldier of the army, he thought that it was a lie. And so he slapped Lama Ganchen in the face, saying, like as to say, how dare you lie? But the point is that he did find someone that was Chinese just walking around, but Lama Ganchen explained that he said, okay, now finally my problems will finish once I leave Tibet, but as soon as he did, he got slapped in the face. And he said, the samsara is always here, is also here, and this was his inner reaction, let's say. Other of my teachers, like Lapaga, said after many days without eating, walking through the Himalayas, very difficult moments, in India, they gave him some food, and it were bananas and some kind of flour called in Tibetan manjapa. It's a kind of blackish flour that those that are not used to eat it, you put it in your mouth and it doesn't go down. It's very difficult to swallow it. It sticks in the mouth and it doesn't go down. So again, Lapaga said that he was so hungry that he had food but he was not able to eat it, and they were very distraught by it, and he was not used to eating bananas, so he ate it with the peel on, and it was disgusting. So sometimes we see how the conditions are there, that people want to help you, but you're always in your own problems. And again, Lapaga said also that when they were able to have more material things and get out of this extreme poverty, many other problems arose. So the key is not to create ideal conditions, even if the environment around us is very important, and we will talk about it, but the key is developing our own inner qualities that allow us to be well independently from the situations that we find ourselves in. That it doesn't mean to develop some sort of being passive towards the world, that anything happens, I'm okay. It's not this, but having an attitude where there are problems, I try to solve them, but I don't let myself get get inside of this reaction mode, and I see the suffering of the other, and I become empathetic, and I develop this love and compassion, but I don't suffer for the suffering of the other. So let's imagine if the point is to have a lot of compassion. Compassion, does it mean to suffer for suffering of others? Then all Buddhas will be beings full of suffering. But the people I met with most compassion were people with most joy. So there's a lot of difference between this sensation of suffering for the suffering of the other and being able to connect and see the emotion of the other and wishing for the other to be happy and not suffer, and doing all in our power in order for this to happen. It's two different things. So I don't want to bore you, but some things we need to repeat.
Arriviamo in quel luogo interno che diciamo, wow, la priorità nella mia vita è amare me stesso.
And if we don't arrive to this point where we see that our priority is to be well within ourselves and the other, having stability, joy, balance, satisfaction, this is my priority before anything else, even before vacations, which seems like nirvana of the Western world vacations. We spend all the year waiting for that week. But what's my priority is how I'm living it, not what I'm doing or where I am. If we're able to arrive to this state with this desire and aspiration, at this point, it comes naturally this question, how can I do it? If my objective is to gain a lot of money and I have this my priority, once that I have this desire, the question that comes after it is, how do I do that? I will try to have a certain kind of job. I'll learn how to play poker. I don't know. Actually, the first one is better, but each and every one of us will look for their own way. Or someone would say, I want to steal. But the point is, we try different means in order to arrive to this objective that we have. But our objective is developing our inner quality as a means in order to develop and overcome our conflicts and mental venoms in order to live life in harmony with myself and others. When this is the priority of what is this state made of these inner qualities, and the only way that it exists in order for developing them is through a gradual process of familiarization. There is no other way. I know that we would like to get this pill for enlightenment, that we do some sort of mix, that who gets this pill will have concentration and satisfaction, will not get angry anymore. There are some things that chemically can develop satisfaction and lower anger or things like this, of course. But the problem is, it's not sustainable. Once I had a long discussion with a psychiatrist, a family friend, and the principal point of our discussion was, who is the boss, the body or the mind? And after our conversation, he said, look, I agree with you. In the end, it's the mind, because he's a psychiatrist with a lot of experience, and he's very good also to giving medicine in a specific and personalized way. But he said, look, if I do a treatment, even if it's a wonderful treatment, perfect treatment, and at the moment is working, if that treatment is not accompanied by a psychological path that is consistent through time and real, as soon as I take out the medication, the patient will go back to the beginning. If the person follows this path of transformation of his way or her way of thinking and overcoming their traumas, this treatment can help giving a support through this. But once we take out the treatment, this stability will persist. So in the end, who is in charge is the mind. Because if only we needed was to have a certain chemical state, I would be the first. It would be much easier. Instead of staying here hours speaking about meditation, loving ourselves and others, we could do something mystical together. Each one of us takes a pill 3 times by day, even 5 if we need. I would be the first to say yes, if it really worked. If we had a pill that would make people become more altruist and generous, with wisdom, concentration, discernment, without anger or jealousy, attachment, ignorance or whatever, would we take it? I would. And I can put all my money aside and order thousands of pills, and I don't know, we go and give it to everybody. But I don't think this exists. And at this point, we have no choice if not doing an inner process of transformation. And the tool that allows us to make this transformation, to do this training, this process of familiarization, is meditation. So why do I want to meditate? Because I want to be in harmony with me and others, independently from where I am, in which situation, or with whom. The next step is why I want to meditate, because I want to help others not to suffer. And in order to do that, I need to get out of my own samsara cycle of suffering. In order to do this, I need to develop my qualities and overcome my mental defilements. And for this, we need a tool that allows us to do this. And this is meditation. Before moving forward, I wanted to go back, because this morning I took some notes, but I didn't have them with me, on the word meditation, because many times we said meditation is not a perfect translation from Gom in Tibetan. And going more deeply and seeing better, it's actually not such a bad translation, but the common use that we have or give to meditation is wrong. Because when we say to meditate to something, what do we think of? Is reflecting on that thing. And I wrote down the word meditation comes from Latin meditare. That means to exercise, to reflect on, and take care of. So here is exercising and repeating. So it's very similar to Tibetan Gom. And if we take also from Latin, the part med refers to measuring and taking the correct measurements. So if we see the term meditation, we have many citations in the Greek world or Greek philosophy or whatever, where meditating refers to familiarizing, exercising. So it means I exercise on that thing. And the term in Tibetan, there is also this verse that says, meditating is making something familiar. So meditating is making something familiar. So if we put together these things, without entering into too much detail, I wrote, meditating is not entering in a state. It's taking the correct measurements and repeating it until it becomes one's own nature. So it's not entering in this meditative state. Meditating is taking correct measurements, which means I want to induce myself in something through which I want to familiarize. And once I took this correct measurement, I put myself in the correct position, I need to repeat that until it becomes spontaneous and natural. Okay? So it's interesting to see that also in our own origins in Latin and Greek, it has the same origin, the word, as for the Tibetan, but I don't know why in the common use we kind of lost its original meaning. So let's take it back. So unfortunately, recently something happened that happened also in Tibet in the 14th century, when Lama Tsongkhapa, represented here at my right, when he was teaching in Tibet, one of the fundamental points that he repeated were meditation is not a state. Meditation doesn't mean to empty the mind or not thinking thinking of thoughts or stopping thoughts, which was one of the most famous schools in Tibet at that time. And if we see in our modern times, there's a whole current and vision that takes meditation to this state of emptying the mind, not thinking of anything, and just staying, so entering in this meditative state. But we cannot simply meditate. We need to meditate in something. Because meditating is familiarizing, is exercising. I cannot simply exercise. I need to exercise myself on something, with something. So when we say, I go meditate, what does it mean? Meditate on what?
Non è possibile meditare senza meditare su qualcosa.
It's not possible to meditate without meditating on something. At the same time, it's not possible to familiarize without familiarizing on something. So meditation is a tool. It's not an end. It's a means to an end. Of course, having patronage of this tool is already a lot. There are many types of meditation. Originally, also Lama Tsongkhapa repeated this many times. Originally, it's seen as a specific type of meditation, drogom, which is unidirectional meditation, so keeping the mind still on an object. And Lama Tsongkhapa described other two types of meditation, principally another and then another one again, and in Tibetan is Chegom, Jogom, and Shargom. Chegom is the analytical meditation. And analytical meditation is a process of analysis where we take an object and we observe it from each and every part of it and try to understand it until this object gains clarity. So, for example, analytical meditation on our own mortality.
Ci poniamo la domanda, moriremo o no?
Because if we ask ourselves, will we die? The answer would be, are you sure? But if I meditate on certainty of death, is it a concept or an emotion or a sensation that I want to familiarize with? Is this sensation? I need to induce myself to this inner state, saying, I will die. It's not a joke. I think it will happen to me as well. A probability we have. One doesn't meditate on the certainty of death in order to live with fear of death, but in order to develop the importance of life, the priority of each moment, giving value to each moment of life. This is one of the reasons why one meditates and familiarizes with one's own mortality. And it's one of the most beautiful things to do. But before this, we need to induce ourselves to this inner state that we have the certainty that we will die. And then the next step would be having certainty of death, and then the certainty of uncertainty of the moment of death. That brings, as a consequence, an urgency of living well life and to get ready for death. But starting from the first point, certainty of death, we first need to induce ourselves to this state. And here we have a whole process of analytical meditation. So I stay silent, observe my breath, try to calm my thoughts. And at a certain point, I start inwardly to convince myself of certainty of death, as if I were doing it with someone else. So I enter in this inner process saying, see of everybody who was born up until now, one moment or the other, they will die. Death doesn't have an age. It's one of the most natural things. When someone is born, eventually will die. Even if, strangely, we live our life as if we were immortal in our own mortality. But if we observe, it's the only certainty that we have, that eventually we will die. And we could go on with this logical process of explanation. For example, every moment that passes, I'm getting closer to my death. Every day, I'm closer to my death. And there's no problem in that. The problem is not dying because we don't have a solution for that. The problem is to live badly. But death is a certainty. I enter in this process where, until I arrive to this inner state of, you can actually feel it in your body. When we can feel this certainty, this real certainty of our own mortality, at this point, we take this state and I put myself with unidirectional concentration on this certainty of death. And I stay in this state as long as possible. And this makes it so that this certainty kind of mixes with us and becomes more deep. The first phase, analytical meditation. The second phase, unidirectional meditation. For example, another example connected is impermanence. First, analytical meditation. Everything are constantly in transformation, because everything that interacts inevitably transforms. Everything that I see, that I touch, that I feel, the thoughts, everything constantly transforms. The being itself gets transformed. I try to analyze this until I arrive to this inner conceptual certainty that everything that I see and I perceive is in constant transformation. I arrive to this conclusion. This is the part of the analytical meditation. Once I arrive to this conclusion, I need to generate this mind that perceives impermanence. And here there's a fundamental point that I did not explain earlier. I wanted to explain it later, but we can say it now and then maybe we can repeat it. When we talk about impermanence and certainty of death, we have to apply it as an antidote to its opposite. In the case of death, what's the mind that we need to eliminate in this sense? Is this sensation of immortality. I will not die. When we think of ourselves, do we live life as if we were mortal or immortal? We live as if we were immortal within our mortality. I will die. Let's see. Sometimes we hear, if I were to die. I already heard it many times. Someone that really wants to talk and is doing like the testament and saying, if I were to die, and I say, okay, which alternative do you have? And it's when I will die, not if one day I will die. We have no choice. So we have this sensation of immortality. So first of all, we do this analytical meditation of the certainty of death. And once we arrive to the conclusion, I put it slightly aside. I come back to the present moment, to my breath. I think of my own life, and I allow this sensation of immortality arise. It's not from a conceptual thing from the mind. It's something that comes from a deeper habit. And when this sense of immortality starts to arise within me, then I take the analysis I previously did and I will say, no, I will die. And I deconstruct this sense of permanence, this sense of immortality, generating a sensation, a deeper sensation of certainty of death. And I stay in meditation on this. On impermanence, we're strange in many ways, and if we see how the world around us is impermanent, and we don't need a degree in philosophy, even like if we see at my beard, for example, from this morning until now, did it grow without making a lot of philosophy? How much did it grow? If we start to analyze with philosophy, theoretically, yes, but in direct perception, since I made the question until now, did it grow, my beard? No. But if we analyze, actually, beard is not that it grows from one instant to another, and from one moment to another it grows, simply grows. But no, it's actually a very slow process. And once I read that beard grows like 5 nanomillimeters per second, something like this. 1 nanomillimeter is like 1 millimeter divided by a million. I don't remember anyways. It's so slow, this process, that we're not able to perceive it. But when we look, it appears to us as if it were static, but actually it's in movement. But it's not just this. The example I always do is, I see you today. We see each other tomorrow. We go to bed and we see each other tomorrow. Who do we think we will see? The same person, not someone that changed, or no? But reality is that the reality, even if it's always in transformation and impermanent, it appears to us as if it were permanent. So meditating in impermanence, first of all, I need to do an analytical meditation where I explain to myself why things are impermanent, always in transformation, etc., until I arrive to this inner conclusion where I am sure that it's impermanent. Then I put this analysis aside. I observe anything, people that I have in front of me, my own sensations, the column that I have in front of me, the wall, the paintings, whatever. I observe one thing and I allow the object to appear to me, and I see, how does it appear to me? Does it appear impermanent or permanent? And I allow this mind that grasps through the object as if it were permanent to arise. And when this mind that grasps through the object as if it were permanent, and it's not a conceptual thing, we need to allow it, to allow this spontaneous attitude that we have to arise. And when this arises, then we take out the analytical meditation we did earlier, and we deconstruct this sensation of permanence until we can perceive the impermanence of the object, in order for us then to stay in a unidirectional meditation on this sensation. So this passage that is here in between is very important, because I can meditate a lot on patience, but if I don't recognize my own anger, the effect is quite low. If I do an analytical meditation, seeing how it's bad to get angry until I arrive to the conclusion, no matter what happens, it's not a good reason for me to get angry, then I put this aside and I imagine this situation of anger, and I allow my anger to arise. And it's when I feel this inner movement, then I take the analysis I did previously and I say, no, There's no reason to react in this way, and I'm able to deconstruct this reaction and stay in front of this object without this sensation of aggressivity. And at this point, I generate this sensation of patience, and I stay in this in a unidirectional way. It's completely different. Rather than meditating just on the concept of patience, or I try to generate a wonderful sensation of patience, but even if my arrow, even if I let go of my arrow, if I don't catch the objective, it has no sense. It doesn't get to the point. So it's my sensation of anger and impermanence. It's not the sensation of anger or impermanence as a general concept. Okay? So analytical meditation, Qigong, it's very important because it allows us to generate this state, this mental state, with which we want to familiarize. Okay? So we have analytical meditation, unidirectional meditation, where the mind relaxes on one object and stays there, without distractions, without agitation, it stays there. And here we can open a whole world that we will talk about. And then the third type of meditation that is not very talked about, called Shargom, that means to appear. Shar means east. Tibetan is a very peculiar language. The same word changes completely of meaning based on the context. Sometimes with translators that don't have a lot of experience, usually they take the first word of the dictionary. For example, Shar means east. It means to arise because of the sun that rises at the east. And so when we say Shargom, is not the meditation of the east. Is the meditation where we allow to our mind to arise all the steps in order to familiarize with something. For example, with a sports person, an athlete, they imagine all the steps that they need to do before they actually do it, like mentally. They say, okay, first I need to run this way, then I need to do this and do that. I need to imagine the steps that I need to do. This is Shargom. I start from here and I say, okay, I need to go from here to the restaurant. What do I need to do? First, I need to get up with awareness, in silence. I go towards the door, I take the shoes, I put them on, I get out. I will see on the right the Sutra of Lalita Vistara coming from Indonesia. Then I go through the shop, some publicity. Then I go down, I go to the bar, or so I think of the steps that I need to do. So what this allows us to do, to familiarize with a path. And this is called Shargom. For example, in a Guru Puja, there is the verse, or 84th verse, from the 84th to the 114th, that is a form of Shargom. The verses helps us to review all the steps of the gradual steps of enlightenment. First, I need to generate the certainty of death, then the certainty of uncertainty of the moment of death. I realize that nothing will help me in my death if not my spiritual path. Then I need to understand the law of karma. Then I arrive to the refuge. Then I develop love towards myself. And from this, I develop equanimity. After this, I can see myself in others, generating empathy. From empathy, I will generate sympathy. And from this, I will generate love. And from this compassion, From compassion, I will generate altruism. From altruism, I go back to myself and I see a sensation of impotence, because how can I help others? I have no other choice rather than developing myself, developing bodhicitta, the wish of becoming a Buddha in order to help all sentient beings. So I need to get in the path in order to do this. So I need to perfect my qualities, and I start with generosity, then morality, then patience, then enthusiastic force, concentration, and wisdom. And then after this, we're almost to the end. So, and we can go on saying, if during this life we're not able to realize these inner qualities, may I, in the moment of death, be aware of the process of death and be able to recognize my very subtle mind and use the moment of death as a path towards enlightenment. So we take where we are today and we imagine, visualize the different steps. And this is the Shargom, to make it arise in our mind, the various steps. And it's interesting that when we do this many times, it becomes clear what we need to do. It is said that great masters of the Atisha tradition, the Kadampa masters, did this repetition of the steps of the path. They were so familiarized with this that they were able to revise it, review it, the whole path, putting just in the moment of getting on the horse, they were able to review all the path. And it's not so complex actually, but we need to have familiarity with it. So what happens when we don't have familiarity with the path is that we can lose ourselves in the midst of all of this, because I can do something, then I lose myself here, but then I go back to it because I need to do that thing. But it's important to review and revise these steps. And from this, we have 3 types of meditation. So,
familiarizzare, abituare. Okay.
Let's keep in mind that meditating means to familiarize and repeat.
Noi possiamo affrontarlo in diversi modi.
We can go through it in many ways. We can get through meditation in these days as tourists. That means a taste here, a taste there. It's nice, it's pleasurable. But in the end, we're not able to have a basis upon which to meditate. Or we can go through it at least as beginners, but putting some seriousness in what we do. And here there's an important point, which is, if I really want to meditate, I need to create the conditions. I need to get ready for meditation. I need to create space in order to meditate. And here is the part of preparation for the meditation. The preparation is extremely important. If the preparation is not done well, we will not be able to meditate, even no matter how hard we try. So I would like to... There are these steps of the preparation taught by Lama Tsongkhapa that refer to the sutras of Buddha, that are taught in a context, a formal context, and they are taught in the context of losing everything and just meditate. But I don't think that this is our condition. So I would like to... These same points can be seen in a lighter way, without entering in an extreme of, okay, I leave everything and I just go meditate. Even if it has meaning, it's like saying, imagine how nice it would be to have a very evolved level of concentration, while like saying to our mind, stay here, and the mind stays there, and it's even pleasurable. Now go to another place, and it stays there. Imagine how beautiful it would be to control inner dialogue
senza farlo come
without putting effort. It's just the mind relaxing in this state. And this is a very important point. The state of meditative concentration is not a state of tension. Because sometimes we have this idea, I need to concentrate, and it's like I have to protect from the other thoughts. But the state of concentration is where one relaxes its mind in the object of meditation. Is a state of relaxation, free from distractions. So it is described that if one stopped anything and dedicated just in developing meditative concentration, obviously once having the basis of knowledge for it, but in a period of 3 months, we can develop this meditative state of samadhi called calm abiding, this state of unidirectional concentration. Does it seem a lot, 3 months? Actually, no. It's not a lot. Even if it were 6 months, it's like I stop my life for 6 months and I just do that.
È abbastanza logico.
It's kind of logical. I was talking to a friend, an entrepreneur, the other day, saying, I did a mistake. I wanted to save for a job, but actually didn't bring me anything. But now I find myself in a place where I have to do something that I already had to do. So it's better to just spend this money and do it instead of just saving money and leaving things half done. So the point is, the logic is I prepare myself well with the knowledge, with the preparation, with the conditions I need, and I start meditating day and night for 3 months, for 6 months. I stop anything else and I just do that. I develop this inner concentration and then I go back to my previous life with a level of concentration that is much more evolved. It's logical. But actually, even if there is a beautiful logic behind all of this, but I know very few people that had strength and determination and abilities to do something like this. But this doesn't take away the fact that we can do a lot in our daily life, even without leaving everything. So we will start from this principle, not from the principle of, okay, now we take the teachings on how to go in retreat and how to develop this concentration state, leaving everything else. Even if in our imagination it would be nice to close ourselves just to this. But if we don't have the preparation, it becomes torture. So at least let's start to prepare for it. So the first condition, necessary condition, called in general
sono le condizioni. SOC sono le condizioni, ciò che serve creare.
The conditions, what we need to accumulate in order to reach this state of inner calm, this abiding calmness. And we will explain later on what it is, but in general, to meditate. So the first point we need as a preparation is called
che sarebbe il necessario dimorare in un luogo adatto.
To create the correct conditions. So if I want to meditate, in this moment, I don't have the ability to stay just fixed on one thing, stay still on one thing. It is said the noises, for example, are like...
Perché la nostra mente oggi che cosa segue principalmente?
Are like a plug inside of us. Because what is our main distraction today? Our senses. If I do this, the mind follows.
Sento un odore, la mente lo segue.
I smell something, the mind follows.
Sento un dolore nel
I
ginocchio,
feel pain, the mind follows.
caldo, freddo, piuttosto che
If I feel warmth or cold, the mind goes there. So the first distraction that we have, that our mind follows constantly our senses.
e anche in quel disegno
Also in that drawing of the meditative path
calma dimorante.
for developing the calm abiding, there are some objects in the beginning that are the conch that represents the smell, or the plates that represent the sound, then another object represents a touch, and then the form, and then the fruit with the taste. So it means that in the beginning, when we try to meditate, the mind is distracted by the sensorial objects.
Per questo è possibile meditare in un luogo che c'è tanto
So
rumore.
is it possible to meditate in a place with a lot of sounds? Yes, but first
Prepararci
we need to prepare and train in a place that is silent.
perché finché la mia mente
Because until my mind is used to following sound,
aiuta a non averli per cercare di
it helps not to have them in order to keep our mind still. So we need to create space in order to meditate.
condizione lo spazio,
First condition is the external space.
cercare di avere un luogo.
So having
Per esempio, se vado a meditare in un luogo,
for example, if we meditate in a place where we usually work,
cerco uno va per meditare, ok.
one goes there trying to meditate. I go in the office, I sit on the chair to meditate.
In genere quando sono in quel luogo,
And when I am in that place, usually I'm thinking of nothing. I hope not.
quello è un luogo dove uno
This is a place when we go there,
solito il luogo
usually
del lavoro,
the place of work, the workplace,
tanti tipi di lavori, ma di solito il lavoro è un contesto.
is a context where there are things to be done.
Quindi se vado in
So if I go in that place, the tendency is that my mind is taken by the things that I need to do.
se vado in un
If
luogo,
I go in a place where
un luogo dove c'è tanta tensione,
there's a lot of tension, conflict, and fights, the tendency is
riportare la mente in quel posto di litigio.
to follow in this conflict and fighting. It is said, for example, not to go meditate, especially if we do retreats, but not meditate in a place that is very close to an object or situations of a lot of attraction or aversion. For instance, let's say we are at home and I have a neighbor towards whom I have a lot of aversion. And I'm there trying to meditate, and at a certain point I hear a sound and I say, look at him, why this guy is doing this, I'm trying to meditate. So the mind of aversion arises. Or let's say that I'm in love with a neighbor and I'm meditating and I'm hearing the door and I'm saying, he arrived. What is he doing? The mind is already taken. But if I'm neutral, I don't care of the sound that the neighbor does because it's just it. So as it arises, it ends. So in general, it's better to stay in a place that is as neutral as possible. If we are in a place that takes us back to places where the mind is distracted, of course the mind will follow. If we meditate at home, which is something beautiful, for those that have the possibility, of having a room dedicated to the spiritual practice, to meditation, it's really wonderful and very useful, actually. But not everybody have this possibility of having a room dedicated to this. But if I have a space, a place that I dedicate to the spiritual practice and meditation, where the objects I put there bring my mind back to this path, where we don't have many other distractions, and where I enter in this space just to meditate, to study Dharma, and to do the spiritual things and nothing else, naturally, when I'm there, I'm induced to practicing and not doing something else. So If we have the possibility of having a physical space to dedicate to the practice, it's great. If we lack of this space, because I imagine that majority of us don't live in a house with so many rooms, if it's possible, take just an angle of the room and use it and dedicate it to meditation. Because not being a habit, meditation, it's like we want to meditate, let's say, 15 minutes every day. Okay. If I arrive at home or in the morning, for example, I wake up and I don't have a place to sit, it's more difficult. See, I don't have this place where to sit, and I find an excuse just not to do it. But if I have my space in order to do this, just that, with my cushion, a small altar in front of me, or even without, just having a small space for meditation in one room, for the spiritual practice, this already helps us a lot. And if this is not possible, because one lives, I don't know, in a one-bedroom apartment and there's no space for taking even an angle of the room just for this, the other possibility is to have a cushion that is just the cushion of meditation, that I use it only for this. So this cushion is kept with respect, and when I sit on it, I know what I have to do. It can be also just a piece of cloth, and it transforms the space. For instance, I woke up, I made my bed. On top of the bed, I put this piece of cloth or the cushion, and I transformed the space. I create the physical space in order for me to meditate. And this makes the difference. Because in the preparations for meditation, one of the first things to do is to prepare the space, the place that is favorable to the practice. So, trying to be far away from distractions. In modern times, we have many more distractions.
Quindi, una cosa che possiamo anche farlo adesso.
So one thing we can do it also now, and it's very useful for meditation. Take the phone in your hand, for those who have it.
Facciamo una cosa che si fa raramente.
So let's do something that we rarely do. With my phone, you have to press these two buttons together. We need a lot of courage for this. And then we do switch off. It's not airplane mode. We just switch it off. Goodbye. It's gone. I don't want to see you anymore. Because it's a strange thing, but between us and this object, there is like a sort of umbilical cord. There is this connection that stays active somehow. I'm here following the teachings, I put in silence mode, but there is something there, a connection, maybe someone wrote to me, maybe there is something there, so I meditate and there's the phone next to me, but there's a part of me that is attracted to that. So I switch it off. Switch it off. And it's strange, but my experience is that when we do this act of courage of switching off the phone, something changes. It creates an inner space. So we need to take out distractions. The phone needs to be switched off. Ideally, we prepare the place to sit. There is an important point that is the posture in order to sit down correctly. So we need to have a cushion where the glutes are slightly higher than the knees. And here it depends on the constitution of each and every one of us, but some of you may need a higher cushion, some others a lower one. I invite you to try the correct cushion, and once you find it, is one of the objects of attachment. I have this cushion here that I use, that since I took it in Thailand once, is one of the objects of attachments that I have. That for me, this is really works very well, but we need to see, it depends on the body of each of us. So I put and create the space to practice. Then before sitting down, we clean the space. It's an act of respect towards what I'm about to do. If I have 15 minutes to meditate, I just adjust a few things. If I have more time before starting the day and before meditating, I clean the space as an act of, like, while cleaning, we clean the thoughts that are unnecessary, these negative emotions. I leave those out. It's an act of respect towards what I'm about to do. I prepare and clean the space. And then I sit down. And what we can also do, we prepare the altar, not every day, but once I prepared it once, I have it there where I have the representation of the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, or the representation of body, speech and mind, sacred body, speech and mind. That in other words, I have the representation of what I want to become. Okay? The path and the path to obtain it. I put an offering in front of the altar, a light, an incense, some water, fruit. I make an offering. Then I can do 3 prostrations. And when we do the prostration, is an act of recognizing and paying homage both to what we want to become, the Buddha, and to our own path and our own potential. Because when we pay homage to the Buddha, we're not paying homage only to the historical Buddha or whomever, but we are also paying homage to our own potential of becoming Buddha, to the Buddha that one day I will become. And so the path. So I'm recognizing the importance of what I'm doing, my potential of reaching this. So possibly we do 3 prostrations and then we sit down. We have some conditions of the place that are cited. Ideally, we should have we should be in a place where what is necessary can be obtained easily. For example, if we need to do a retreat, but we're in a place where finding food is very difficult. Already this is a problem because I'm sitting there meditating and I'm already thinking of lunch and saying, how will I do? But if I'm able to organize everything beforehand, ideally when I go to meditate or I dedicate some days to meditation, the more I'm organized earlier and I don't have to think of basic things of life, the better it is. And here I open and close a parenthesis. Every time that we find ourselves in front of a choice, shall I do this or that? I go, not go, I take this or that or whatever. Every choice takes with it, brings a small tension. It's like there's a kind of menace within each choice that we have to make. I go to the supermarket. I need to buy the pasta. Which one do I take? This is better, but it costs more. But that one is this, the other one is that. Every time we choose, even simple things, within these choices, some possibilities open, and we have some sort of menaces that create a form of stress. So taking decisions generates stress. How many decisions do we take each day? Some studies say like It's like 40,000 decisions per day, something like this, that are about should I say or not say, should I go or not go, should I take or not take. And one of the things that helps us in order to have more space to meditate is to diminish or lower the things that we need to decide. What we put on to dress, whatever we have. We don't have to think of what should we wear, what do I eat, what we have. So when we have already defined things, it's easier. The schedule is already established, so I try to lower the choices I need to make. When we lower these decisions that we need to make, I open more space for other things, because these choices create a space of tension, create stress, and occupy some space within us. For instance, when we go to the restaurant and you find yourself in front of the menu, do you have some sort of stress? What do I order? What I like most of all is when I go to the restaurant and there is someone there that says, okay, what do you not eat? Okay, this. The rest you will choose. Okay, thank you. I don't want to to choose what to eat. It's the most wonderful thing to me. So when we want to meditate, the first condition is creating a context where we don't need to preoccupy ourselves to obtain basic things for life. For example, where to sleep tonight, how do I do to go there, or how to eat, if it's cold or too warm. So all of this creates a lot of tension. So adapting this to our life, to our everyday life, one of the things we can do is to lower the quantity of decisions that we need to take every day, simplifying our life.
Okay.
It's not possible to take out all these decisions, but I think there are many small things that we can simplify. And this is one of the aspects. Another aspect is trying to meditate in a place that is good. Ideally, the place should not be a hostile place. So I don't go meditate where there's someone fighting with me, for instance, or where there is tension. I try to avoid. But if I don't have choice, I meditate there. But ideally, I choose a place where in that place I feel comfortable. This is quite important. It's important that it's a place where there's not, for instance, a lot of humidity, a lot of cold or warmth. It needs.
Vado per meditare, poi alla fine mi faccio del male, se il corpo non sta bene, la mente non riesce a star bene.
It needs to be a healthy place where we meditate, not unhealthy, because then if our body then gets sick, it's not useful. The same is for instance in our house. We try to choose a place in our house that is kind of healthy. It's not that we have to suffer. We need to find a comfortable and healthy place. This is very important. This is regarding specifically retreats, but when we do a long period of meditation, it's important to have around us good company. And for good company, it doesn't mean to have funny people around us, but it needs to be people that, with the interaction with us, they help us in our meditative state and doesn't distract us from this, that they believe in what we're doing, that don't put us doubt in it. Because if I go there and I try to meditate, and if I have there someone with me that is, yeah, it's funny, I love this person and everything, but when I say to him, I don't know, I'll go meditate This person can say, ah, come on, you already meditated yesterday. Why are you doing it? Of course, this doesn't help. So it's important to be with someone that gives value to what we're doing and puts effort in this view and has similar view of us in this way and doesn't create distraction for us.
And
last is good conditions, so where we have silence. This is one of the most important things, where almost anything happens. If I try to meditate in a context where many things are happening, it's quite difficult. But I need to be in a neutral place, where the mind is able to calm down, where we don't have this feeling of missing out on something. And when we translate this in our everyday life, we need to create space to meditate. And in creating space, we start with the physical space, to create also temporal space. Temporal space is one of the most fundamental things for us, because I choose a place where I want to meditate. I have a room or an angle of the room, I take a cushion, and this is the physical space. And if I'm able to use this every day, I get the habit of it, I have the tendency when I'm there to already do this. But then the other difficulty we have is that we don't have the temporal space to meditate. We are lacking this. And to explain this better, we need to understand something else. We need to understand what we mean with space. So let's take a step backwards in order to arrive to this point. Definition of space.
In tibetano, che la traduzione
The
letterale
translation is
la negazione non
the non-negative negation of obstructive contact. Simplifying, the simple not existence or lacking of obstruction.
Per fare un esempio veloce,
An example. Imagine your car. There's someone that says, look, I need to come back to your city as well. Do you have room? Do you have space in your car? How many places you have in your car? 5? Okay, let's imagine 5 spaces in the car. We are in 4. 2 people come and say, can you give me a lift? Because we need to go to the same place. Do you have space? Yes or no? We have 5 spaces, we are in 6, so the answer is no, we don't have space. Why? Because physically there's no space, or because there is a norm saying how many people should stay in a car. Because if we want to, in a car, maybe, I don't know, 12 people can stay in there. I think they might. In India, for example, there was this car, the ambassador, we entered in 25. It was a taxi, and he stopped every 5 kilometers, every 2 minutes, like someone was getting on the car. And I remember this car had this... I was sitting in front, but behind me there were 4 or 5 people, then other people on top, and then other people on top of those. And in front it was the same, and the person driving was almost out of the window to drive. But we were able to stay there. There was space. So why we don't have space for 6 people? Because if we would want to, would we have space for 6 people, even in the trunk? But what doesn't allow us to do this? A law, a standard, let's say. Let's say we are in 2 people in the car, and we want to speak about intimate things that we can finally share with each other. And then one person arrives that But with this person, we don't want to share these things with this person. And this person says, can you give me a lift? No. But what is obstructing this? What is the obstructive contact that doesn't allow us to have this person in the car? Because we need this intimacy, and so I need this balance, and it would break this balance. So when we say that we have space, we mean that there is no obstruction, there's no blockage. If we don't have space, it means that there is obstruction. So what does it mean to create space to meditate? Taking away obstructions, taking away the obstacles, what can block our process of sitting down and meditate. And the first thing that can obstruct this process is the lacking of a physical space. Where do I sit? I don't know. So we create a physical space. The second is the temporal space. I don't have time to meditate. It's not true.
Tutti noi abbiamo tempo.
We all have time to meditate. Everyone.
Per dire, non lo so, c'è qualcuno che è
There's
andato a lavorare in pigiama?
someone here that ever went to work in their pajamas?
Che uno si alza e dice, no, io al mattino non c'ho tempo.
Because we say in the morning we have no time, we need to go to work.
Subito a lavorare.
Okay, so you wake up and you go straight away to work? Or do you have time to get up, make coffee, shower, get dressed, maybe read some news or chat a bit before going out to work?
Quindi il tempo
So
c'è.
time we have.
È vero che io non ho tempo per
It's not true that we don't have time to meditate. It's that we don't give priority to this.
perché svegliarmi 15 minuti
Because to wake up 15 minutes earlier and doing 15 minutes of meditation,
non è impossibile per
it's
me.
not impossible for any of us.
Quindi
So
si utilizza uno strumento
we use this magical tool
che viene chiamato
that it's called the calendar.
okay. Sembra una battuta.
And it seems a joke, but it's not.
Non lo so se è mai capitato.
I don't know if it ever happened to you. It happened to me. I write something in my calendar and I need to do it. It's there, so I need to do.
Quindi una
So
delle
one of the
cose che
things
noi in qualche
is
modo ci siamo abituati sin da bambini
we
col nostro sistema scolastico.
got used to our school system to have
Devo fare quell'altro, devo
a schedule. I need to do this and this and that. And since this is the system where we are born in,
in Amazon,
if we were born in the Amazons, it would be different. But
però siamo cresciuti in questo.
we were born with this system. So let's take it
Mettiamo nella nostra
and we put it in our calendar,
15
in our
minuti di meditazione.
15 minutes of meditation, 30 minutes of meditation. I create temporal space.
È uno spazio che
And it's a space that no matter what happens, this space stays there.
è un po' come per dire per il quanto che io
It's like saying, it doesn't matter how late I am in the morning, do I get clothes on or no? Yes.
per quanto sia ritardo
It doesn't matter how late I am, I take this space to
faccio quel minimo.
prepare myself inwardly. I do this minimum of meditation at
Non è
least.
una questione di
It's
avere
not
tempo o meno, è una questione di creare spazio temporale o
It's not a question if we have or not space. The question is if we give or no priority to meditation. And this we can do in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, just to create this space and protect this space. For example,
consiglio che volevo lasciare,
an advice,
volevo parlare di questo verso la fine di questo,
I wanted to speak about this at the end of these days, but I can introduce it right now,
è poter prendere un giorno
is to take one day at least,
ogni mese, ogni 2 mesi, dai,
every month, every 2 months,
e dedicarlo alla pratica.
and dedicate it to the practice, the whole day,
Il weekend. Però
the
almeno
weekend, at least one day.
prendo un giorno,
I take one day per month
quel giorno
and I dedicate that day to meditation.
cosa faccio? Lo metto
What do? I put it beforehand in the agenda, in the calendar, and I do it. There is a wedding. I can't. There is that day. There is. I'm sorry, I can't. I need to meditate.
non è che io non voglio vedere.
It's not that I don't want to come. It's in the agenda. So I I have to do it. If it's not us that we create the space for what we want to do, life will overcome us with everything that will come at us that will become a priority. So we need to take things in our own hands and make our own priorities. Otherwise, they will not happen by themselves. Okay? So we create physical space, we create temporal space. The next step is creating mental space in meditation. And this we will do with the correct posture of meditation.
La meditazione, gli esercizi di respirazione.
With exercises of breathing. We will do 2 brief sessions of meditations together, where we will put emphasis on these exercises, and it's easier to do them together rather to explain them. So once we did it 2 or 3 times together, we learned them. So if we stay here and explain them, actually it's easier to just simply do them. So these breathing exercises that we will do, it's still not meditation, not yet meditation, but are exercises to prepare ourselves to meditation, in order to prepare our mind to meditation. The interesting thing is that if we do well the preparations, then the effective practice comes as a consequence, as a natural consequence, almost without effort. But if we try to meditate without doing the proper preparations before, it's very difficult. So this is the first thing. We need to create the conditions. There are also other points, because I think that I think we need to stop at 5. No, 5:30. Okay, perfect. So once I create the condition of the place, the second thing we need to do, physical space, temporal space, mental space. So we sit down. Is it possible to meditate sitting down, standing up or laying down? Yes, but it's much more difficult. Trying to meditate standing up generates more mental agitation. The mind is more active. And trying to meditate laying down, there is this tendency of ending up sleeping. And it's not for anything that for many centuries there is this established position transmitted by centuries that is the correct posture in order to meditate. And I say, someone can say, okay, can I sit down in a different way? Yes, you can try, but this posture was approved and worked for many centuries. If you want to do it in a different way, you're free to try, but I think it's best to follow what was already established. And we can see this quite quickly, but wait a moment.
Ok, facciamo una cosa.
Let's do something. We explain something now and then explain something else later on, because this will help for the meditation we will do after. So in the preparation, we said there is preparation of the body and the mind. In order to prepare the body, we need to sit down properly. And it's called the 7 or 8 postures of Verochana. Actually, it's 7 plus 1, so sometimes they're counted 7, sometimes 8, but in the end it's the same thing. So let's see them together. These are the points for correct posture for meditation that are transmitted for many centuries in Tibet, before this in India, and this is the posture for meditation. The first thing is to have a straight back. With our straight back, it's like we have
Ok? Quindi immaginiamo che la nostra colonna vertebrale è abbastanza dritta, però non
like having a wire, a thread pulling from our head, and so our shoulders are not curved too much, or stretched too much. And in order to help keeping a straight back, it's also our legs. So the posture of our legs, the ideal, the ideal posture is this. Are you able to see? This is called the position of the Vajrasana, the Vajra position, with the 2 feet on top of the 2 legs. Why this? While I'm sitting down here, even if I want to or not, my back is straight. I don't have to put effort in order to keep my back straight. But what is the problem with this? That when we talk about correct posture to meditate, we start from a basic principle, which is the first, is sitting down in a comfortable position. Because if I sit down like this and I'm not used to it, after a while, maybe I'm not so used, so I can start feeling some pain. And if I'm sitting there and at a certain point, here it starts to hurt, where does my mind goes? Here. With what do I want to familiarize? What is the object of meditation? Impermanence or the pain in my foot? It's not the pain in my foot. So if I have this pain and the mind stays there, I will familiarize with this. So don't sit down in a position that is not comfortable. And we have many exercises, asanas or yogas to help us to sit in a comfortable position. I already saw many teachers of yoga that practice in a very serious way, that say the yoga practice has as an objective preparing the practitioner to sit down to meditate, in order to sit down correctly. So who has the possibility of learning and doing some exercises of stretching or whatever to sit down in a correct posture is wonderful. But the legs, this is the ideal position. Then there is the half lotus or half vajra, that is one leg up our thighs and the other down. This is the one I also use most of the time. So like this. If this is not comfortable, we can put both our legs down, or sitting on a chair, or sitting like in Thailand. Sometimes I did it. It happened in periods of retreats where it started to hurt my leg, and they sit down with the right leg on the back. It seems uncomfortable. It's actually very comfortable, especially with a good cushion. But the key is having the legs in a posture that helps the back staying straight. Personally, I like this posture. We can do it with the right leg or the left leg on top. Usually I do the right on top of the left, in this way. Usually is under the skirt, so you cannot see it, but now you can. So 1, the legs, 2, the back that is straight. So ideally, crossed legs, straight back. And here it's important that our back is not tense or curved, because if we sit down in a curved position with our backs, this increases the tiredness and lack of clarity. But if we stay sitting down with a tense back, this increases the agitation, mental agitation. So we need a straight back, but not tense, helps to have mental clarity. So 1 leg, 2, the back, 3, the hands. So the hands, we need to keep them traditionally, in our tradition, right hand in front of the on top of the left hand with both thumbs touching each other at the height of the navel. So one on top of the other. They are like one or two fingers under the navel. And if we sit down in a correct posture, the hands will naturally fall in the correct place. If we don't have the legs, if we don't have crossed legs, then what we should not do is keeping tension in our shoulders. And it's not what we want. Because if we need to put effort in keeping up our hands, this is not useful. So one of the things we can do, for instance, if we have a scarf or whatever, and we can put it on our legs in order to lay our hands on top of it, then this is better. If this position is difficult, then we can keep our hands on our knees. But traditionally, the correct posture is right hand on top of the left hand, thumbs touching each other, reaching at the navel. The arms are not touching the body, but they form some sort of triangles. So legs, back, hands, shoulders, they don't need to be too much tense. They need to be relaxed. So legs, back, hands, shoulders, head. The head doesn't need to be too much in front, nor too much on the back. Slightly tilt forward. Then the mouth and the eyes. So mouth is relaxed. The teeth are not touching. The lips are closed, and the tongue touches the upper part of the mouth. Like if these are the teeth, the tongue touches behind it. It's not extremely... It's not an obligation, but it helps so much, because one thing that happens is that when we do a longer meditation, it's the need of swallowing our own saliva. And if we don't put the tongue in this position, either we swallow our saliva or we start to drool. So the best thing is to keep the tongue in the correct position, because to swallow our saliva, it seems strange, but when we start meditating is a very strong movement to do. And so it kind of...
Quello che può essere un problema per questo è che certe persone,
for instance, some people can have some periods where they have some mucus. And when we have this mucus, what happens is in meditation, we need to swallow, and the tongue doesn't solve this issue. In Indian tradition, there is this practice of Kriya Yoga where we clean our nose and we clean and take out the mucus and whatever in order to meditate correctly. But in general, the tongue on the palate in order to not create distraction while swallowing. Then eyes. So legs, back, hands, shoulders, head, mouth, eyes. The eyes are slightly closed, looking on the ground. So they're not open nor completely closed. They're slightly closed, looking to the downwards. And if we try to meditate in the beginning with the eyes completely closed, this will make us more tired. And it's easier to fall asleep. It's easier to concentrate, but then the practice is less stable. If we are able to do it with the eyes that are slightly closed, but not completely closed, it's much better. So we have the legs, the back, the hands, the shoulders, the head, the mouth, the eyes. The eighth posture is the breath. So this is why it's called 7 or 8 postures of Vairocana. In some cases we say 7 because the breath is not included, but then of course we need to take care of it, and others include the breathing in the posture, and I prefer to include it because the way we breathe is very important. So once we are sitting down, first we breathe completely, and this is part of the posture. In order to breathe correctly, we need to start developing awareness on our breathing. So we observe our breathing, our breath, we observe the movement. And it's interesting to see that when we start observing the movement, our tendency, first of all, is to bring the attention where? In our body. If we observe our breath. The nose, the belly, ideally towards the belly. Observing the movement that the muscles do while we breathe. Because when we're breathing, we breathe with many parts of the body. It's not just something that happens in our face. So we observe the movement of breathing, of the breath, and once we observe this, we observe the sensation at our nostrils. Slowly, slowly we observe the temperature of the air that is more fresh when we breathe in and warmer when we breathe out. And when we observe this and we observe our breathing, and we did this for a while, at this point we take our breathing to a breathing through the abdomen. There are those that are more used to breathing much more with the chest or whatever, and we have to bring it down to our abdomen. And we can start putting our hand on our belly, and we allow our hand to move forward and backwards when we breathe in and out. One exercise we can do that is done also with children, but it works also with adults, is to lay down, put a toy on our belly, and while breathing we see the toy moving up and down. There are some people that are not used to it, and it will take a while in order to create this habit to breathe with the belly. Breathing is fundamental because in our meditative process there are two principal enemies or obstructions to meditation. The mental tiredness and mental agitation. In our case, what is the one that prevails? The mind that stays there and doesn't think of anything and is a bit cloudy, or the mind that goes all the way around? Mental agitation. So what we need to do is to do what decreases mental agitation. And the breathing from the chest increases mental agitation, while breathing from our abdomen, from our belly, calms the mind. So already this helps us. So in the posture of meditation, we breathe deeply, inhaling deeply, exhaling deeply. We try to breathe without being in a rush. And after a while, after 2 or 3 breathings, we do what is called the yogic breathing, that is inhaling, filling up the belly at first, and continuing inhaling in a continuous flow without stopping until we fill up also our chest, until we can feel a slight movement of the shoulders upwards. And sometimes I see that when I'm tense, in the beginning, sometimes I can feel this kind of crack because it's like this openness. So first I inhale, I fill up the belly, then the chest, until a slight movement of the shoulders, moving a little bit up. And then we exhale, firstly from the chest and lastly from the belly. In order to exhale correctly, in the beginning maybe it's a bit difficult, try to exhale keeping the belly filled. And then at last, you empty it until contracting the abdomen a bit. So we inhale, filling up from the bottom up, and exhale from the top down. Once we do this, the last step to conclude the posture of meditation is the one where I add to the breathing the keeping the air after inhaling and keeping the air after exhaling. So we breathe in 4 phases. Inhale, keep the air, and when I keep the air, I take the energy under, I push the energy under the navel, and I contract slightly the lower muscles. Then we exhale deeply and slowly.
Finisco di espirare, trattengo per un attimo.
Then I keep the air after exhaling, and then I inhale again. In this continuous flow. So in these 4 phases of inhaling, keeping the air, exhaling, and keeping the air. Okay? These are the 8 postures of Vairochana: 1 legs, 2 back, 3 hands, 4 shoulders, 5 head, 6 mouth, 7 eyes, 8 the breath. So breathing, the correct breathing, is part of the posture of meditation. Then, depending on which practices, we can change the ways in which we breathe, but usually it's always an abdominal breathing. One of the interesting things as a curiosity, and this is something that in our way of thinking, modern thinking, in order understanding things help us, when we breathe, one of the things that we give most importance to is inhaling. But there is a fundamental point here that our mind needs energy. 1/3 of the energy of the body is consumed by the brain. And when we do a mental activity that is quite intense, we need a lot of energy. The energy of our body derives greatly from oxygen. And when we breathe, one thinks that in order to have more oxygen, we need to inhale more. But actually, no. What happens is the following. When we breathe, without entering into too much detail, who wants to, you can read the book called Breathe.
Scritto da James Nestor.
Written by James Nestor. If someone has this interest, I advise this book, James Nestor, Breathe. Anyways, what happens is when we breathe, when we exhale,
a secondo della quantità di diossido di carbonio
based on the quantity of carbon dioxide we exhale, this is what determines the quantity of oxygen that we are able to absorb in the next inhaling. So if I put out 10 of carbon dioxide, but I inhale 50 of oxygen, my body absorbs how much? 10. And the other 40 get out from the mouth. If I exhale 40 of carbon dioxide, I'm able to absorb 40. So the longer is the keeping and the exhaling, the higher is the level of carbon dioxide that I get out, and consequently the quantity of oxygen that I am able to inhale. So one of the consequences is having more mental clarity. So also from a physical point of view, inhaling from the nose, keeping the air, and exhaling gives us more energy. In this book, he's a researcher and did many research. There are many studies on this. For instance, for some athletes that did many tests doing the same exercise, for example, with the bicycle, breathing through the mouth or the nose in these 4 phases, and they saw that there were much better results breathing from the nose in 4 phases. But okay, let's not get into too much detail. But the point is, what happens is when I keep the air and exhale more slowly, this helps to have more calmness and it helps to have more mental clarity. So we need to give more value to keeping the air once we inhaled and exhale. Because inhaling comes naturally, but we need to give more emphasis on keeping the air and exhaling the air. Then this is a preparation in relation to evolved or advanced practices. There are techniques that are quite advanced where the meditative states happens within the state of keeping the air. So we need to keep the air for longer periods, and in this state need to generate some inner states, but this is not the topic of today. So if we do correct breathing from the beginning, so then this will have many positive uses also for the future. So let's start simply by creating some familiarity with breathing in 4 phases and always breathing from the nostrils. So inhaling all the air possible without forcing it, but we just force a little bit. It doesn't need to be with effort, but there needs to be an awareness here. So I fill up the belly and the chest. I exhale. I keep the air after inhaling, what is comfortable. Then I exhale, emptying the chest and after the belly. I keep the air, and then I inhale again. So in a while we will do this exercise together, and with this we have the 8 postures for meditation. And already being able to have these 8 postures has great benefit. We are not meditating. We are learning to sit down correctly and to put ourselves in the correct posture for meditating, but already sitting down in a correct posture with the shoulders relaxed, staying in a balanced position, breathing correctly, just doing this already brings a lot of benefit. Okay? Last thing. Then we do a break. In the process of learning to meditate, there is a part that is called developing flexibility. Some translate as flexibility of the mind and body. So flexibility is when we're able to do something without effort. For instance, flexibility in the body in meditation is that in the beginning we sit down to meditate, and after a while we need effort because it's difficult to stay still. So we are lacking of flexibility. While when we sit down and it's pleasurable and we don't need to put effort in order to stay in this position and without moving and sitting down immovable, it's not only is not difficult, but it's also pleasurable. So this means we reached flexibility of the body. One exercise that we can do, personally I found it very useful. I did it many years ago. I did a lot of this. In the period I lived in India, is sitting down in the correct posture without worrying of meditating. Just, I will not move. And I stay there. I can think of anything. Doesn't matter. I'm not meditating. Simply, I am sitting still with correct breathing, and I'm not moving. In the beginning, we will have this tension wanting to itch. Something itches and we want to scratch it, but it's, if you start in one place, then it will come in every place. So we have this feeling of itchiness. We don't touch it, we leave it there, and it will pass eventually. Just by saying it, the wish like comes up of scratching. But we need to do this exercise, which is a preparation for meditation. We need to sit down in a correct posture, and simply we stay there. Half an hour, 10 minutes, 40 minutes, 1 hour. Okay? But now we never have to force ourselves too much. Never do an exercise that when we finish it, we are tired of it. It's better to do lesser in time rather than becoming it difficult and stressful. Because the mind here is free to go anywhere, but simply we will not move physically.
Cerco di respirare correttamente.
We try to breathe correctly, and I stay there.
All'inizio è faticoso.
In the beginning is quite difficult, but after a while, one starts getting the habit, and at a certain point it becomes pleasurable. Like the sensation, like the body becomes all one. You don't feel the difference between one hand and the other, and at a certain point it becomes pleasurable. And this also helps not to have the fear in sitting down to meditate, because we can say, but if I sit down, it will hurt my leg and this and that. Instead, we create this habit of sitting down, staying there. And the interesting thing is that when we sit in the correct posture and we simply stay there without worrying about thinking correctly or familiarizing the mind on something, we're not doing analytical meditation, unidirectional meditation. We're not meditating, we're just familiarizing ourselves with the correct posture of meditation. Simply staying in this posture, at a certain point, the mind just becomes tired of moving around and searches for a place to stay. And usually this place, we find it in our breathing. And the most beautiful thing is that when the state of concentration is not something that one craves for, but it's a result of an inner process that one does. So I invite you to try this. We can do this also afterwards. Just we sit down and we don't worry about anything else. The only thing is I will not move. I breathe and I stay there. One can also do it as a game, like how much time am I able to stay here? Maybe in the beginning is like 5 minutes, and slowly it becomes more time until it becomes pleasurable not to move. Once I was in India, in monastery there were some kids. They were very small. The smallest was 8 years old. The biggest was like 14. They were 3. And one day I said to them, I brought some chocolate, and I said, who wants chocolate? Of course, everybody said that they want. And I said, okay, everybody just sit down with the correct posture. They were not used to meditate, so stay there and don't move. The first that moves will lose, and the last that moves will win the chocolate. And they stayed there. How much time do you think they stayed there? After 45 minutes, I had to tell them, okay, now stop. What one can do for chocolate. The smallest was 8, and after 5 minutes, he was not able to stay there, and he was there trying to distract the others, but they stayed there. And in the end, they opened the chocolate and they all ate it together. But the point is doing also some game and enjoy doing this exercise without the weight of having to meditate. I just have to stay still. I allow myself to relax in this state. And with this, the more I do it, the more it becomes easier and it becomes more pleasurable. And from this, it creates a basis upon which then we can meditate. Now, we will have a break. I created the schedule, but now I don't remember anymore. What time is the next session? 6:30. So we have a moment of break. We will do an exercise of meditation together.
Lame kutse raptenchi namkaratinle chokchur gepada losan tempe drume sasumgi drove munsela taktu negyurchi kewa kuntu yanda lamada dralme cheki pela longchuchi sadan lamge yente rabzone dorje change kopa nyurtobo sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shin yinsen takto delekpe koncho sumke chinge lob koncho sumke ngodrubutsol koncho sumke trashisho all'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i 3 gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni, possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e cospargere il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. Ok, grazie a tutti. Adesso facciamo una pausa, poi faremo le 2 sessioni, una prima della cena e una dopo cena.
Thank you, everyone. We will do the next 2 sessions before and after dinner.